Hello and welcome back. I hope you've all been well. I'm doing another video today about short stories that are worth reading. The other two lists that I've done have featured 5 short stories. You may have noticed that this one only features 4. The reason for that basically is because it tends to be quite hard to find good short stories, or good stories full stop. A lot of the stuff I've been reading lately has been mediocre. It's been quite boring, and the stories are just not daring enough to be interesting and to include on a list like this. So I've managed to scrape together 4 short stories that I think are worth reading, because I never put any short story on these lists. I only put good quality stories on there. So I've got 4 good ones for you today, and I'm going to start with quite an old story from 1967 by one of my favourite authors, J.G Ballard. This story is called The Overloaded Man, and it's all about a stressed out husband who has a kind of 9-to-5 job, I think. He lives with his wife, and his life is very stressful, and he just kind of reaches a point where he has enough, and he kind of detaches himself from reality. He finds a way to just sit back and escape from all of his worries, and he learns how to see everything around him as a kind of series of abstract, colourful shapes that don't even make sense. It's like he just kind of detaches himself from the world in general and just sees it as if somebody walks in front of him, they're just a moving object, or like a park bench would be just like an oblong brown shape to him. And it's a funny story. It's a comical story. I think Ballard probably wrote it when he was in a funny mood or something, but it really works. I've read it a couple of times now. It's funny, but it still has Ballard's kind of trademark architectural insights as well. He uses words like rectilinear and stuff, and it really feels like a Ballard story still. So, and it's got that quality about it where after you read it, you kind of get the feeling that everything's unimportant. All of the things that you worry about every single day are not really worth worrying about at all. It kind of has that effect. So I think it's a good story for that reason. You can find this one in the complete short stories of J.G Ballard. I think it's volume 1, but check that first before you go out and buy it, because I'm not sure. I think it's volume 1. Number 2 on this list is a brilliant story by Palahniuk called Guts. This one was published in 2005, and you'd have to describe this story as grotesque. It's like a gross story. I specifically remember the first time I ever read this story. I was lying in the bath, or sitting in the bath, reading the paperback book. It's published in a book called Haunted by Palahniuk. I was reading the book and I just couldn't believe what I was reading. I had that feeling where the words were jumping out the page at me. It's that good. It's about like a teenage boy who experiments with different masturbation techniques, and there are 3 different techniques he uses. He shoves a carrot up his arse. He also rolls a piece of candle wax into a long thin strip, puts it down his penis, and then masturbates with it in his penis. I won't tell you what happens next, but it's very shocking indeed. But the highlight of the story is the 3rd technique, where he goes out into the swimming pool out in his backyard. His swimming pool has got a pump at the bottom that pumps the water, and he pulls down his swimming trunks. He goes right down to the deep end of the pool at the bottom, and he sits on this pump because he gets a thrill from the suction that it gets on his arse, right? Again, I won't tell you what happens next, but it's one of the most shocking things that you'll ever read. As always with Chuck Palahniuk, it's written in a very unique style that, you know, only he can write in this style. Very well written, and it's daring. That's the main part as well. It's very daring. When he wrote this story, he obviously didn't care what anybody would think about it. He didn't care about offending people. It's daring and it's good. And this story is also responsible for making several people faint during public readings. Chuck Palahniuk put a paragraph at the end of Haunted writing about this story, about when he went round to lecture halls or wherever doing public readings. People started fainting when they heard this story. You might be able to get a free copy online, I don't know, but if you want to buy the book, it's called Haunted, Chuck Palahniuk. I highly recommend it. Number 3 on this list is a story called Same Time, Same Place by an author called Mervyn Peake. This is also an old story published in 1963. You may remember Mervyn Peake from my first video of short stories. Same Time, Same Place is great. I read this fairly recently. It's about a young man who meets a woman in Piccadilly Circus in London. He kind of falls in love with this woman, but he only meets her in this one place. I think it's like a restaurant or something. And he stays with her for about an hour and has a great conversation or whatever. And then he leaves. But the woman never leaves with him. He always leaves her sitting down at this table, which is quite relevant to the story. And then after a few weeks, they plan to get married. And they organise a venue for the wedding reception. And he gets on a bus and he gets to the destination. And then he looks out the bus window and he looks into the building and he suddenly sees that the whole room is filled up with freaks. There's like a man that's covered in tattoos all over his face and head. There's a man with a really long neck like a bird. And he also sees his would-be wife sitting there, but he sees her for how she really is. Again, I won't spoil the story, but it's a very weird story. And the general message of this one is things are not always as they seem. You might think that you understand something, but really you don't. You might see it in a different light the next day. Very weird. Again, very well written. It's from the 1960s, which I love. That was a great era. And it gives you a feeling where you're kind of not sure of anything. It kind of unsettles you. You don't know what's around the next corner. You may have a friend and you think you know them, but do you really know them? They might have another side to them that you don't know. Good story, and you can find this one in an anthology called The Weird, which is available on Amazon and wherever else. I might do a review of The Weird as well in a few weeks. That's number 3. I'm going to finish off with number 4, which is a story called Dial Tone by somebody called Benjamin Percy. This one I think was published in 2007, and it's about a man who works in a call centre in America. And this guy hates his job. He lives a mundane, miserable life, a miserable existence. And on the news one day, there's a man who's turned up dead. And somebody's kind of climbed up a huge pylon and they've tied the body to the pylon. And the story kind of revolves around this dead man on the pylon. And it's a big mystery as to who done it. And this story makes brilliant use of telephone technology for the purpose of horror. You read about telephones and the dial tone, obviously, and obviously there's a great big pylon, and you also find out that now and again you kind of hear old conversations on a phone line, and that's kind of weaved into the story as well. The prose is very witty. The prose is a pleasure to read, which makes all the difference. The story is a little bit disorientating at times, but in a good way. I think that's done on purpose. And the story kind of reminds me of Fight Club, which is a film adaptation of a story by J.G Ballard. Most of you have probably seen Fight Club, the movie. Dial tone kind of reminds me of Fight Club in the way that it's a critique of modern working life. It's like a critique of these big companies and stuff. I kind of got that vibe from the story. And I've also read online that there's a secret meaning to it, or a kind of a secret ending. I couldn't really see it myself, and I'm not sure whether it's true, but there might be a secret ending to it. I'll let you be the judge of that. You can find this story for free online, or I think it's in an anthology by Benjamin Percy. I'm not sure the name of it though. You can find it. It's an easy story to find. Alright, so 4 short stories there that I promise you are worth reading. I wouldn't put any story on this list, only very good, high quality stories. Each one I love, and each one is well worth the time and effort. Before you go, I'd just like to remind you that there are 4 things waiting for you right now if you become a member of jamesflynn.org. Number 1, you get a free ebook called A Journey into My Mind. Number 2, you get the first 3 chapters of Swarm, my science fiction novella, all for free. Number 3, you get to find out the meaning of life according to me. And number 4, you also get a free mystery gift, which I will not disclose right now. It's a mystery. It's a surprise for when you sign up, okay? It will take 1 minute to sign up, and all these things are yours. Thanks very much for watching. I'll see you next time. Try to have a great day on this peculiar, fantastic, mystifying rock we call Earth. Goodbye.